The clink of silverware and the hum of laughter filled my son's dining room, the kind of warmth that's supposed to wrap around a family like a blanket. But beneath that cozy noise, I could feel something sharp in the air. It was Thanksgiving, my favorite day of the year. The smell of rosemary turkey, cinnamon pies, and roasted garlic floated through the house. I'd spent the morning helping my daughter-in-law, Carrie, set the table. I even polished the old silver I'd given them when they got married. It felt like home. At least, it did, until my son cleared his throat. He was sitting at the head of the table, wearing that serious face I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. He was 32 now, with that confident posture that made me proud and nervous all at once. "Mom," he said, setting his fork down. "We need to talk about something important." The table quieted. Even little Ellie stopped bouncing her spoon. I smiled, uneasy but trying to keep it light. "Can't it wait until after pie?" I joked. "You know me, I can't take bad news on an empty stomach." But he didn't laugh. Not even a twitch of a smile. "No," he said. "It can't wait." Carrie looked at me, not unkindly, but with that expression people wear before they agree with something they know will hurt. And then my son said it. "Mom, your free ride is over. You've been staying here for 8 months now. It's time you start paying rent, $2,300 a month. Starting December 1st. The sound that came next wasn't silence, it was worse. It was that stunned, fragile air where no one dares breathe. My fork slipped from my fingers and hit the plate with a metallic clang. He said it so matter-of-factly. Like he was talking about a utility bill. Like he wasn't talking to the woman who once worked 3 jobs to keep him fed and in college. Someone, maybe Carrie's brother, let out a low whistle. My heart thudded so hard it felt like I could hear it echoing in the china. I looked at him, my son, my baby boy, and tried to smile. "You're joking, right?" He didn't answer. "Jason?" I said again, quieter. "You're joking." He folded his hands. "Mom, this isn't a joke. You've been living here rent-free. We've talked about boundaries. You need to contribute or..." He hesitated. Then, like a blade slicing through butter. "Or you need to move out." The room was so quiet I could hear the faint tick of the clock above the mantel. Everyone's eyes darted between us, his cousins, his wife, even my granddaughter, who looked at me with wide, confused eyes. I swallowed hard. The turkey smell suddenly made me sick. I had lost my apartment after my company downsized last year. I thought it would be temporary, just a few months with my son until I got back on my feet. I'd been trying. Lord knows I'd been trying. But at 57, job interviews don't come easy. I'd cleaned their house, cooked dinner, babysat, even helped with their laundry. I thought I was helping. Apparently, I'd just been taking up space. Then something inside me cracked. Not anger, not yet. Something deeper. I stood up slowly, every chair creaking as the table turned toward me. Jason's eyes widened a little, maybe expecting a fight. Instead, I whispered, "You really mean that?" He nodded once. And I said 5 words. The 5 words that would change everything that came after. "Okay, Jason. I'll leave tomorrow." Gasps around the table. My daughter-in-law's fork hit her plate. Jason blinked. "Mom, that's not..." "No," I said softly. "You've made yourself clear. You want rent, and I don't have it. So, I'll go." There it was, calm, steady, final. I turned toward the kitchen, my hands trembling just enough that I hoped no one noticed. Inside, my heart was breaking, not because of the rent, but because my son, the boy who once cried when I left him at preschool, now looked relieved to see me leave. That night, I packed my old suitcase, the same one I'd used to leave my ex-husband 30 years ago, came down from the closet shelf. It still smelled faintly of mothballs and lavender. I folded my clothes slowly, as if dragging the moment out could make it less real. I heard Carrie and Jason talking in the living room. Their voices muffled, tense. "She's taking it too hard," Carrie said. "She'll be fine," Jason replied. "It's time she learned to be responsible. We've done enough." Responsible. The word stung. I'd been nothing but responsible my whole life. I looked at the photo on the nightstand, Jason, 10 years old, grinning, holding a baseball trophy. I remembered the night I stayed up past midnight sewing his team's logo on his uniform because he wanted it to look perfect. He'd said, "You're the best, Mom." Now, he was charging me rent like I was a stranger. I zipped the suitcase, wiped my tears, and whispered to no one. "You'll regret this one day, Jason. You'll remember this dinner." The morning after Thanksgiving was cold, the kind of gray, brittle chill that makes the world feel hollow. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Jason's voice again. "Your free ride is over." It played on repeat, a broken record spinning inside my chest. By dawn, I was sitting at the edge of the guest bed, my suitcase zipped tight beside me. Carrie had left a mug of coffee outside my door. That small gesture almost broke me more than Jason's words. She meant well. She always had. But she'd stopped looking me in the eyes weeks ago, ever since the bills started piling up. I sipped the coffee, cold and bitter. Then I stood, smoothed my blouse, and took one last look around the room. There were faint outlines on the dresser where my framed photos had stood, Jason as a baby, Jason's wedding, little Ellie's first birthday. I'd taken them down the night before. I didn't want to leave any ghosts behind. Downstairs, Jason was at the table, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. He looked up, startled, when he saw me with my bag. "Mom," he started, setting the phone aside, "you don't have to leave right now. We just..." "Jason," I interrupted quietly, "you were very clear. I can't pay. So I won't stay." He sighed. "I just thought maybe we could talk about a timeline. You know, give you a few weeks to figure something out." I wanted to ask him where that compassion was last night. But the words stuck in my throat. "Don't worry about it," I said. "I'll figure something out." He nodded, awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck like he did when he was uncomfortable. Ellie came bounding into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, clutching a stuffed bunny. "Grandma, are you coming to my recital today?" That nearly did me in. I crouched down, brushing her hair back gently. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Grandma's got to take care of a few things first. But I'll be there in spirit, okay?" She frowned. "What's spirit mean?" "It means," I said softly, "even if you don't see me, I'll be cheering for you." She smiled, wide and innocent, and hugged me tight around the neck. I breathed in her little girl shampoo scent like it might be the last good thing I'd ever smell. Then I stood, kissed her forehead, and walked out the door. The air outside slapped me awake. The sun was up but weak, like it didn't really want to be there either. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking down the street with my suitcase rolling behind me. I didn't have a plan. Just a name scribbled on a paper, a friend from church who'd once offered me a spare room if I ever needed it. But when I called her from the bus stop, her voice trembled with guilt. "Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry, my daughter moved back home after her divorce. There's no space now." It was the kind of polite rejection that slices deeper than anger ever could. So I kept walking. By nightfall, I was sitting on a bench outside the library, my suitcase beside me, watching the last streaks of sunlight fade behind the trees. People hurried past, couples, families, kids with shopping bags, all heading somewhere warm. I watched them like a ghost. The thought hit me. I'm homeless. At 57. After a lifetime of doing everything right, working, saving, sacrificing, I was sleeping on a bench because my son wanted boundaries. Tears came hot and fast, but I wiped them away before anyone could see. I'd been invisible long enough, I didn't want to look pathetic too. I remembered that night vividly, the first night I ever felt completely alone. I curled up under my coat, clutching my phone, scrolling through old photos of Jason as a kid. There he was, missing his front teeth, holding up a finger-painted card that said "I love you, Mom," in crooked letters. My throat closed up. I whispered into the dark. "Where did you go, Jason? Where did my boy go?" By morning, my back ached and my pride hurt worse. I found a local shelter that offered warm meals and temporary beds. It wasn't much, noisy, crowded, but it was shelter. That's where I met Martha, a retired nurse with kind eyes and a silver braid down her back. She noticed my trembling hands as I poured my coffee. "First night out?" she asked. I nodded. She smiled gently. "Don't worry. You'll find your feet again. Life's funny like that. It breaks you before it blesses you." I laughed bitterly. I think it forgot the blessing part. She shrugged. "Not yet, it hasn't." Martha and I became fast friends. She told me about a community center nearby that helped older women get back on their feet, job training, housing programs, small business grants. Something in me flickered, something I hadn't felt in months: hope. I applied the next day. The director, a woman named Ruth, looked through my application and smiled. "You used to do bookkeeping?" she asked. "For 20 years," I said. Her eyes lit up. "We could use someone like you. Not full-time, just to help us organize our donation records. It's volunteer for now, but things have a way of turning into something more." I nearly cried. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt useful again. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into that work. I helped Ruth balance their finances, streamline their system, and even find accounting errors that saved them hundreds. She started calling me her guardian angel. And one afternoon, she took me aside and said, "How would you feel about coming on part-time? We can't pay much, but it's honest work." It wasn't much. But it was dignity. I said yes. 3 months later, I had my own small apartment, nothing fancy, but mine. I bought a second-hand couch, hung my photos again, and filled the place with the smell of lavender candles. Sometimes I caught myself smiling for no reason. But every now and then, I'd still think about Jason. I wondered if he ever thought about me, if the house felt emptier without my humming in the kitchen or my cornbread at dinner. Then one day, he did. And when he came knocking, he wasn't the same man who'd told me to leave. It had been almost 5 months since Thanksgiving. 5 months since I'd walked out of my son's house with a suitcase and a broken heart. In that time, I'd built something new, small, fragile, but mine. My apartment wasn't much, just a 1-bedroom above a laundromat, but the smell of fresh detergent every morning reminded me I wasn't sleeping on benches anymore. At night, I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea, listening to the distant hum of city life. I'd grown used to the quiet, the kind that doesn't ache anymore, just exists. That morning, I was balancing the center's donation ledger on my kitchen table when someone knocked on my door. 3 slow, uncertain knocks. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I froze. Jason stood there. He looked older. Not physically, but in that way people do when life's been rough on them. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, his smile uncertain. "Mom," he said softly. "Hi." My first instinct was disbelief. My second was a rush of memories I didn't want: the dinner table, his words, the silence that followed. I didn't say anything. He shifted awkwardly. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. Of course. He walked in, glancing around at the cozy apartment. This is nice, he murmured. Small, I said. But it's mine. He nodded, his jaw tightening. Yeah. I can see that. We stood there for a few seconds, two people with too many words between them. Finally, he sighed. Mom, I owe you an apology. I crossed my arms. You owe me more than that. He winced, but didn't argue. You're right. He ran a hand through his hair. After you left, things started falling apart. I don't even know where to start. I said nothing. Just listened. Carrie and I started fighting. A lot. She said I was cruel to you, said she didn't recognize me that night. Then she took Ellie and went to stay with her sister for a while. We're trying to fix things, but... He trailed off, eyes dropping to the floor. And the house? I asked quietly. He let out a shaky laugh. Gone. I got laid off in January. We were already behind on payments. Lost it 2 weeks ago. For a long moment, I just stared at him. The irony was bitter. My son, who demanded $2,300 rent from me, had lost his house to the same world that had nearly swallowed me whole. He swallowed hard. I don't know what I was thinking, Mom. I thought I was setting boundaries, being responsible. But I was just scared. We were drowning in bills and I panicked. I took it out on you. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I looked at him, really looked. The proud, cold man from Thanksgiving was gone. In his place was my boy again, the one who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. My heart softened, but it didn't forget. Jason, I said gently, I loved you through everything. Every mistake, every hard year. But that night, I took a breath. You broke something. Not just between us, inside me. He nodded, eyes wet. I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to fix it, if you'll let me. Silence. Then, a long exhale. Sit down, I said. You look like you haven't eaten in days. He smiled weakly. You always know. As I ladled soup into bowls, something shifted in the air. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. We sat at my tiny table, the same way we used to when he was little, elbows bumping. He looked around again. You did all this on your own? Mostly, I said. A few angels helped. He chuckled. Figures. You always attract good people. I shrugged. Maybe. But I also learned something, Jason. What's that? That sometimes, the people you love most have to hurt you, so you can learn to stand without them. He looked down at his soup, blinking fast. I wish you didn't have to learn that because of me, he whispered. So do I said softly. But maybe we both needed it. We talked for hours. About the job he lost, the bills piling up, the way Carrie had been staying with her sister. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't need to. By sunset, he stood to leave. Mom, he said, lingering at the door, I don't have anywhere to go tonight. The motel's full and Carrie, she said she needs space. I studied him quietly. The same boy I'd once carried through fevers, scraped knees, heartbreaks, now standing in my doorway, asking for shelter. Poetic justice doesn't always come with a smile. Sometimes it comes dressed in humility. I stepped aside. Then stay here tonight. He blinked, surprised. You mean it? I nodded. You have a couch. You're welcome to it. He smiled faintly, tears threatening again. Thank you, Mom. That night, after he fell asleep on the couch, I stood in the doorway and watched him, my son, peaceful for the first time in months. And I realized something. Forgiveness isn't about erasing what someone did. It's about choosing to stop carrying it. But I also knew this. I wasn't going to rescue him again. If he was going to rebuild, it had to be his turn to stand up. The next morning, I left early for work, leaving a note on the counter. Jason. There's breakfast in the fridge. You can stay one more night if you need to. But remember, the same way I learned to stand on my own, you can too. And when you do, come back, not as my tenant, but as my son. Love, Mom. He stayed one night. Then another. Then he found a small job, then another. Slowly, we began to talk again, calls, dinners, laughter sneaking its way back in. By spring, Carrie and Ellie joined him at my apartment for Sunday dinners. It wasn't perfect, but it was family again, fragile, mended, beautiful. Winter melted quietly into spring. The snow outside my window had turned to slush, and with it, the heaviness in my chest began to ease. My days fell into a rhythm again, mornings at the community center, afternoons balancing accounts, evenings with tea and the gentle hum of traffic below. Jason called more often now. Sometimes just to talk. Sometimes to ask for advice, little things, like how to stretch groceries or fix a loose button on Ellie's dress. The kind of questions he used to roll his eyes at. It wasn't the same as before Thanksgiving. It was better in a strange way, slower, more deliberate, built on something honest instead of obligation. But there was still a distance. Something neither of us could say out loud. One Sunday, he came by with Ellie for dinner. She'd brought me a drawing of a stick figure family holding hands. "See, Grandma," she said proudly. "That's you in the middle." My throat tightened. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Jason smiled, watching us. He looked better, healthier, more at peace. He'd started working at a logistics company part-time, rebuilding from scratch. After dinner, while Ellie watched cartoons, he lingered in the kitchen, drying dishes beside me. "You always made it look so easy," he said quietly. "What's that?" "Life. Bills. Work. Raising me. I never realized how hard it was until now." I smiled faintly. "That's the trick of being a parent. You make it look easy so your kid doesn't see the cracks." He nodded, thoughtful. Then he said, "I've been thinking a lot about Thanksgiving. About why I said what I did." I stopped drying. "Jason, we've talked about that." "I know," he said quickly. "But I don't think you understand how much I regret it." He set the plate down, leaning on the counter. "You were always there for me. Even when Dad left. Even when I dropped out of college for a year. You never made me feel like a burden. And then, when you needed me for the first time, I couldn't do the same for you." His voice broke. "I think about it every night." I turned to him slowly. "Jason." He shook his head. "I found something last week. When I was packing some boxes from storage." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, folded envelope, yellowed at the edges, my handwriting across the front. My stomach tightened. "To Jason, for later." I remembered that envelope. I'd written it years ago, when he was in college, before his wedding. I never meant for him to find it. "Where did you get that?" I asked softly. "It was in an old box with your things." I opened it. My hands trembled. "You read it?" He nodded. "Yeah. And, Mom, I didn't know. I didn't know what you gave up." That letter wasn't meant to be a secret, it was a truth too heavy for him back then. Inside, I'd written about the years after his father left. How I'd nearly lost the house twice. How I'd skipped meals so he could have lunch money. How I'd worked nights cleaning offices after my day job, pretending I was working late so he wouldn't worry. I'd even mentioned the scholarship he thought he'd earned entirely on his grades, how I'd scraped together half the tuition just to make sure it went through. He had never known. I swallowed hard. Jason, I didn't tell you those things so you'd feel guilty. I told you so you'd understand that love isn't measured in money. He nodded, tears running down his cheeks now. But I measured it, Mom. That's what kills me. I thought I was doing the right thing, setting boundaries, being an adult. I didn't realize I was just repeating the same coldness Dad showed you. I set the towel down and reached for his hand. Jason, listen to me. You made a mistake. So did I. I should have told you how hard it was, instead of pretending I had everything handled. We both tried to protect each other by shutting each other out. He squeezed my hand. I don't deserve how kind you're being. You're my son, I said simply. You don't have to deserve love. You just have to be willing to grow into it. We sat at the table again, like we always seemed to do when the truth came out. Ellie's laughter drifted in from the living room, innocent and steady, the sound of something healing. Jason pulled the letter from his pocket and laid it on the table between us. I want to keep this, he said. Not as a reminder of what I did wrong, but of what you did right. I nodded, my eyes warm with tears. Keep it. Just remember it's not about the past. It's about what kind of man you'll be for her. I nodded toward the living room, where Ellie was spinning in slow circles, humming to herself. He looked at her, then back at me. I will. I promise. As he and Ellie left that night, he paused at the door again. Mom, he said, I've been thinking, there's a townhouse for rent near the center where you work. I can afford it now. But it's got an extra bedroom. Maybe, when you retire, you could move in. Not because you have to. Because we want you there. I smiled. Let's take one step at a time, Jason. He grinned. Deal. And for the first time in a long time, the word home didn't hurt. Later that night, after they'd gone, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window again. The city lights flickered against the glass, soft and golden. I pulled out my old journal, the one I'd started after leaving Jason's house. The first page was angry, shaky. The next few were tired. But the last entry was different. I thought losing my home meant losing my family. I was wrong. Sometimes you have to lose the roof to rebuild the foundation. I closed the book, smiling faintly. Sometimes the hardest lesson a mother can learn is to stop saving her child, and let him save himself. That spring, Jason invited me and Ellie to his new place for dinner. He'd cooked, overcooked, technically, but I ate every bite. As we sat laughing together, Ellie tugged on my sleeve. Grandma, she said, Daddy says you're our hero. I looked at Jason. He was smiling, eyes shining. Is that so? I asked. Ellie nodded earnestly. He said you never gave up on him. Even when he didn't deserve it. I swallowed hard, reaching for her tiny hand. That's what families do, sweetheart. We love each other through the hard parts. Jason raised his glass. To the hard parts, he said quietly. And to the people who make them worth surviving. Time didn't heal everything, it just softened the edges. 5 years slipped by, then another 2. Jason built a steadier life. He and Carrie found their rhythm again, smaller house, simpler joys. Ellie grew taller, always drawing families that looked a little like redemption. I stayed in my little apartment above a laundromat. Some nights I'd hear laughter through the floorboards and smile, life had a heartbeat again. Every Sunday we met for dinner. Jason cooked now, I pretended not to notice when he burned the rolls. The past never vanished, but it became background noise instead of thunder. Once, after Ellie's high school graduation, Jason hugged me for a long time. "Thanks for not giving up on me," he whispered. I smiled into his shoulder. "You made it easy to try." Years later, when I finally retired from the community center, he showed up with a small wooden plaque. It read, "For teaching us that love has no rent." I laughed through tears. The years rolled by gently, like pages turning themselves. My hair turned silver, my hands slower, but I still baked the same cornbread every Thanksgiving. Only now, it was Jason's kitchen again, smaller, cozier, full of laughter. Ellie was grown now, in college, but she still called me grandma like she was 5. She'd taken over my old place above the laundromat, said it reminded her of strength. As we sat around the table, Jason raised his glass. "Before we eat," he said, "I just want to say something." The chatter quieted. He looked at me. "Mom, years ago, I said words I can't ever take back. I thought being grown meant drawing lines. You taught me that family isn't about lines, it's about grace." My throat tightened, but I smiled. He continued softly, "This dinner, this home, this peace, it all started when you decided to stand up that night and say 5 words, 'Okay, Jason. I'll leave tomorrow.' You leaving taught me how to come back." The room was silent for a moment, that full, golden silence where everyone's heart beats in the same rhythm. I reached across the table, took his hand, and said, "And I'm glad you did, son." He squeezed back, eyes glistening. "Welcome home, Mom." Outside, snow began to fall, slow and light, like forgiveness, settling on everything it once missed. Sometimes love doesn't mean staying. Sometimes love means standing up, walking away, and trusting that the people you raised will find their way back, not because they owe you, but because they finally understand you.